Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. Last week I painted a sweet little Aussie bird. Well, this week I've painted a North American bird in watercolour. This is a little bluebird. Now I've painted this on Arches cold press watercolour board, which is one of my favourite papers. This was a full sheet that I cut into quarters. It's really thick. It's 1045 GSM in weight, which means it's ready to paint on and there's no paper stretching required. This video is just a sample of some of the content of the full-length version that I've put on Patreon for my patrons. The full-length tutorial is an hour and a half long, so if you want to learn more, the link for Patreon is in the description of this video, and I've also listed all of the brushes and paints that I use there. I want to wash the head and the top of the wing in on damp paper, so I'm using my Casaneo brush just to apply some water. So I only want to go down to the neckline at this stage, so just here. So I'm just going to take the water to that line, but at the back of the neck, I need to take the water down further. So I'll show you what I mean when I get to it. If you've done my Galar class on Skillshare, you'll know what I'm talking about here. So I take the water to the line here, but at the back of the neck, or the back of the head, I need to take the water further down. And the reason is because I'll have a hard edge where the neckline finishes along here, but I don't want a hard edge at the back of the neck here. So I need to take my water further than that, otherwise I'll get a hard edge there. So here you can see I've got the water to the pencil line, but at the back of the neck I've pulled it down further. So this is some Windsor Blue that I've got on my palette, and I'm going to use this to paint the blue parts of the bird. Okay, so on goes the watery Windsor Blue onto the damp paper. Now I don't want it to be too dark just yet. I want to just keep the colour light because I will be building up layers over the top. I'm just using my smaller Maestro brush here. I think this is a number 3 that I'm using. I'm just painting carefully around the eye there. And I just want a clean line around the edges of the bird. So you can see my waterline goes to here, but I'm not going to take my paint down that far, because if I do I'll get a hard edge there. I've just got to stop it within the waterline there. So I'm just taking the blue down to my pencil line here, but at the back of the neck I've taken it a bit further, but it just remains inside the waterline. If you want to know more about watercolour's hard and soft edges, I have a video here on YouTube that tells you more. On the back of the wing here, I'm just dropping in some brown ochre onto the damp paper. So now I can come back with a touch of the blue and just paint it in the gaps that I left. So I need to put some more blue over here. So I just take the Windsor Blue down onto the top of that row of feathers there. Okay, so to create a bit of texture through the cheek area here, I'm just going to use a slightly damp brush. So it's just got a tiny bit of moisture in it. And I'm just going to dab it onto the damp paint just to disturb it. So that'll create some tiny little blooms, watercolour blooms. I'm not actually dropping water on it. I'm just using my damp brush and that just disturbs the pigment. Now I want to paint some detail around the eye. So I'm just using my Maestro brush to dampen the paper with some water. I don't want it to be too wet. So the paper's just damp and I've got some of the Windsor Blue here on my brush. I'm just painting it onto the damp paper around the eye, just to create a darker patch of feathers there. I want the dampness of the paper just to disperse the pigment and make all my edges soft. paint it carefully around the eye, and each time I load my brush I'm just picking it up from where I've squirted it out on the palette. So there's lots of pigment in it. Not a lot of moisture. The moisture's on the paper. Just using my pencil lines to guide me. And I'm using the tip of the brush, so I'm holding it right up on its point. And I've got a bit of a round shape happening here, which I don't like, so I'm just going to use my damp brush just to soften the edge away slightly. So just always keep an eye on how your paint's drying, and if there's anything you don't like that you need to alter, just do it before it dries if you can. So I've gone ahead and I've done some more work on the head, just on the damp paper, and now I'm adding more colour to the back here. This is just the Windsor Blue. I'm painting it on the damp paper, just spreading it out with my brush. And this colour here is called Brown Madder, and I'm just dabbing it onto the orange section of feathers here. Now I've got a sort of a funny spot here. I'm just going to use a damp brush just to spread it out again. I'm going to paint the top beak in now. So I've got some watery Payne's grey here on my brush. I'm painting on dry paper. Now I'm just going to wash my brush out. Just use a damp brush now, no paint on it, and just pull that paint up the rest of the way. So there was enough paint there, I didn't need any more. So now I want to pick up some pigment from the top of the palette where it's really dark. I'll put that on the tip of the beak, and then I can wash my brush out and just use a damp brush to pull up that paint, to take it further up the beak, and that'll give me a darker tip. So I just pull it up so that I've got the darker paint at the tip, and then it just gets gradually lighter. So up here on the head, I just want to tone down the contrast between the dark and the light. I don't want there to be such a big difference between the dark blue and the light blue. So I'm just painting some watery Windsor Blue over the top of the head. Just doing this on the dry paper. I've just painted some water onto the front of the bird, just where all the orange feathers are, and now I'm using the watery brown ochre just to start to wash them in. Now I'm getting some of the brown madder. I just want to drop that onto the damp paper as well. So if your paper's starting to dry, just dry it off and then re-wet it with some water. So I've jumped ahead here and I've painted some feather detail onto that wash. I demonstrate how I do all that in my Patreon tutorial. And now I'm just using some grey to start painting the white feathers on. I'm working on damp paper here. And you can see here that I'm leaving some of the white paper showing. I'm not completely covering it with the grey paint. I've painted all of the wing feathers on, and now I'm just giving them another layer of paint just to darken them. The feathers are mainly blue, but they've got black tips on them, so I'm using lamp black here at the base. So I'm just painting on the dry paper. So here I'm just using the ultramarine blue to paint over one side of this feather, just on the dry paper, and then I leave just a little gap down the middle to form the vein, and I just paint the other side. So it's just another layer of the ultramarine blue, leaving a gap down the middle for the vein. Same thing on this one. Okay, I'm painting the feet now with the grey mix. So I'm just painting this on the dry paper. So this is the ultramarine blue mixed with the burnt sienna. Just using my number 3 Maestro. And then I'm going to switch down to my smaller Maestro, the 00, and some Payne's grey. So while that first wash is still damp, I just use the darker pigment along the back of the leg here. So I just want to run it along and I want it to bleed over the leg. So this is still Payne's grey, it's just that it's a bit darker now. So just run it along the edge and then every now and then I'll pull it back onto the foot. Now I've got some watery Payne's grey and I'm just painting that on. And then I just paint the back foot the same way. So there's my finished Bluebird. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, as long as I get it finished, I'll have a watercolour hydrangea tutorial for you. So look out for that one. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your painting friends, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you soon.